Today's interview is with Isaac Barlow, the man behind the #1 time tracking app, BusyBusy. Isaac has years of experience in the construction industry, and he shared a ton of knowledge in today's episode. We discuss leadership, communication, company culture, and much more. I know you will enjoy this episode. Hello, Tile Friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Tile Money Podcast. My name is Luke Miller, your host, and my mission with this podcast is to strengthen the tile industry. I believe we can do this. I believe we are doing this with our business discussions and education designed for contractors by contractors. This platform, Tile Money, is assisting tile contractors around the world to build sustainable, profitable businesses. The result? A stronger industry from the installer up. That's right, friends. Today we've got another discussion lined up for you, but before we get into it, I want to take a minute to thank the sponsors of the show. The National Tile Contractors Association, the NTCA, can be your most valuable resource as a tile contractor. They are the oldest, celebrating 75 years of association, of a nonprofit association this next year, 2022. 75 years. They are the largest association for tile contractors in the world. They can answer any question you have for your tile installation business, whether you're looking for solutions to your problems in the field or an introduction to an expert in a specific field of tile. The NTCA has your back. Some of the members I've been meeting are some of the most professional and profitable tile contractors out there. Join the community, join the camaraderie. Laticrete International and other sponsors of ours, of Tile Money. Laticrete is the leading innovator, one of the leading innovators in the tile installation materials world. They are literally credited with inventing thinset and winning the World Trade Center contract for providing that lightweight solution to build the world's tallest buildings at the time. An incredible story. An incredible American story. A family-run, privately held company with family values that you can feel, whether you're talking to your reps in the field all the way up to the family members still working in the business. Laticrete provides everything you need to install tile. From the waterproofing to the grout and silicone, it is a one-stop shop. GoBoard are another sponsor of ours. GoBoard is an innovative tile backer board manufactured by Johns Manville. Discover the possibilities with this easy-to-cut and handle waterproof product. This is a lightweight product, yet very durable. You can carry a bunch of boards in one trip. Seal those joints and fastener penetrations using GoBoard Pro Sealant to achieve an ANSI A118.1 compliant installation. GoBoard Pro Sealant is available in 20-ounce sausage packs. Ask your distributor to bring them in. Prep is everything, and we all know that. So get your prep on with GoBoard. HappyTileGuy.com. I am a co-owner in HappyTileGuy.com. That is where tile contractors are getting professional websites built, fully search engine optimized for lead generation. That is your online hub for your business. Our bonus sponsor today is BusyBusy. Of course, we are speaking with Isaac today, and you can join us later this week. And if it's past that time, you can see it on our YouTube channel where we talk to Ryan Reber from BusyBusy and go over the specifics. Learn more about this app by clicking the link on the show notes. Enjoy this interview, friends. All right. Well, Isaac, again, thank you very much for being on the Tile Money Podcast today and for your interest in, contractors. We have a lot of the same goals, so I'm very excited to get into this discussion. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better as a person and as a contractor, experience, somebody with experience in the contractor world. So perhaps you can just give us your, absolutely. Give us your story and history, both, where you're at and how you got started in the construction trades.
Okay. Well, probably gonna be similar to a lot of people in the construction world. I grew up in a construction family is the real key, so originally I was planning on becoming an engineer in school, but kind of ended up going down the family trade route, so right out of high school, I was thrown in the trenches, literally, because we were in the excavation business. And so I was, end up going in the trenches, laying sewer water, all kinds of pipe. And, just kind of worked my way through that, where I worked my way through working in the trenches and laboring to eventually operating machinery, and eventually running job sites and project manager, estimator, just work through the different roles of construction, but start out from a family business.
Okay, great. Was it residential or commercial or a mix?
A mix.
Mix.
It ended up being primarily commercial, but started out a little bit more residential.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. It sounds like you're well-rounded then.
Yeah. I jokingly tell people I've done things I'm not proud of.
Yeah. Haven't we all?
Including repaired live sewer lines, which is something nobody wants to do ever, I promise you.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I've worked a little bit in the plumbing industry and clean outs and had my, back then I had one of those phones that I think they developed, Nokia or something like that, developed it for the Army, and it was waterproof. It was like the first flip phone that was waterproof, and I would just take it in my shower and scrub it up because I was calling people, and your hands are a mess.
Oh yeah.
Toxic.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. So you know what? You've done things you're not proud of too.
That's right. Things we won't talk about anymore, I guess. Let's get into some business topics because, that's really, what we like to focus on. And, one of the reasons I'm excited to have you here is because I know that's where your head is at also in the contractor world. And most tile contractors I talk to right now in November 2021 are attempting to do either one of two things. I mean, they have a ton of work on their hands, too much for the most part, no matter how big or small their company is. Yeah. So they're either trying to grow employees, or if they want to stay small, they like to grow their profits. So, and that's understandable. I mean, you've got to continue to grow, whether that be by persons adding, personnel or, profit, in my opinion. So what do you see? You talk to a lot of contractors every single day on social media and through BusyBusy. What do you see contractors doing to continue their sustainable growth?
Yeah, good question on sustainable growth. I guess I'm gonna have to give you some of my strong opinions. I'm very opinionated on this subject.
I love it. That makes for a good topic.
Well, excellent. So, when I talk to, there's a lot of contractors that I give a lot of business mentoring and talk with contractors. And in the tech world, we have this term called nail it and scale it. Okay, and that's usually what contractors are kind of. I'll say it like this: that they need to do better is they've got to nail it before they scale it. And what I mean is nail the profits. Get your company where it's working and humming in the right order, where you're making the profit margins that you're after. Develop your systems and culture in your company to the best of your ability before you start scaling it. Because if you scale something that feels very chaotic that you're hardly getting your hands around and you're really scaling it just because you have that opportunity to increase your workload, typically what most contractors experience is less profits and more problems, more headache, less profits. So very heavy advocate for, figure out your systems first and then scale as you figure those out.
I like that a lot. I don't know, I'm in agreement so far. So that's good, but a lot of contractors might kind of push back on this. You're correct, because kind of the popular belief in the contractor space is scale it to gain profitability. The more jobs, the more profit. And I mean, on the surface, this seems to make sense, but why doesn't this make sense for pretty much everybody?
Well, so the majority of contractors you talk to will tell you, a lot of them will tell you the same story. They'll say, I used to make a lot more profit and then I grew my company bigger and I made less profit and I had more headaches. And, obviously, with my other company with BusyBusy, I'm heavy into tracking. And I was heavy into tracking before BusyBusy. BusyBusy was the result of that.
Sure.
So the example is like this: if you're not tracking your projects, if you don't know where you're making profit and where you're not making profit, let's say overall in your company you're making 10% profit, but what you might be doing is making 20% profit margins on some jobs and you're losing 10% on other jobs. And if you don't quite know which ones you're making on and which ones you're losing on, as you try to grow your business, you might be picking up a lot of those kind of projects that you're losing more money on. And so now you're picking up more of the 10% losses rather than the 20% gains. And so you really need to understand your business and understand where you're making your money so that when you grow, you're getting more money. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're in business for. is to make profits.
I would think so, and I encourage all my listeners to stay profitable every episode.
Yeah.
That's my closing line. So, perfectly said. Perfectly said. Identify where you're the most profitable and where you're the weakest, and then it would only make sense that you want to strengthen your weak points, or possibly in some cases eliminate those type of clients or jobs.
Yes.
Would you say? Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I love that you talk about eliminating clients. The other thing that contractors really need to think of in today's world, especially, is, think of your cash flow and eliminate even the clients that are a real headache to you, that don't pay your bills on time or don't pay them in a timely manner, so that you're not spending all your time and energy fighting those fights.
Nice. I like that. So let's go a little bit deeper here, because a lot of my audience is probably an average of 2 or 3 or 4 employees. Probably 3 employees is my average audience size.
Okay.
And because it is an artist-driven trade, it's very personal.
It is.
A lot of my audience does not wish to grow. Now, I've had interviews, people come on the show and say, you have to grow, you have to scale a business. Now, being a tile contractor myself, and somebody who's, that's my main trade throughout my construction history, that's my license,
Yeah.
I push back a little bit, because I feel for some of these people, because I understand they are putting out more artwork. So, but what I try to, tell my audience is, listen, if that's you, and you're never going to have more than 1 or 2 employees, or perhaps some of these people are just, they never want employees.
Yeah.
You have got to be extremely profitable. And I encourage them, in fact, you're so niched down and such a specialty contractor that you could actually charge more than the big guys.
That's true.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, especially tile, you're right. It is an art form. I mean, I'm a homeowner too, and in fact, I'm just on the tail end of remodeling my home.
Okay.
And tile is one of those very emotional things where people pick tile. It's a big part of their home. We're not going to pick it, unless you're working for a track home contractor that's really trying to get the best buck and then sell it, which even in that case, tile is just such a significant part of the work that I 100% agree. You're going to get better money if you're a niche contractor and you can do a great job.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this personal question then, if you don't mind sharing. How did you find your tile contractor? Was he an old family friend, or how did you go about that process?
He was an old family friend, but
I figured.
But I want to say, just to qualify that, he had one guy that worked for him that I knew really well, and I knew did a good job. And I said, I really don't want you to do my job unless you have this guy do it.
Yeah.
Because.
Okay. So you directed the general the builder, right? Or
yes.
the remodel contractor. Okay, great. And I didn't mean that in that way. What I meant is, as I was saying it, I realized, he has a lifelong construction industry. Of course he knows, who he's going to hire already, probably. Sure. So it was maybe a little bit biased question, but I always like to ask that question when somebody tells me they recently had some tile work done.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I even directed the tile contractor, because he had about 17 employees. I said, you have one guy that works for you that I really want to do my house.
Aha. Okay, I missed that. I apologize. Excellent.
No problem.
Excellent. So you did your homework and knew exactly who you wanted installing that tile.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm a little bit of a perfectionist.
Okay. That's good. So, and I'm confident it all turned out good. So
Good.
What, another trend right now with contractors, we talk a lot about culture. So I would like to spend some time talking about culture, specifically, hiring. I mean, everybody is just really having a rough time of it right now with hiring. So one of the things I've noticed with people who are hiring and specifically retaining their employees is, a strong culture. So, in your past, in your history, construction history, and even your history with BusyBusy, what have you seen and identified as some of the better ways to attract top talent?
That's a fantastic question, and I think honestly it's the number one question both in today's world, because it is so hard to attract talent, but I also think it's your number one question when you're talking about profitability. So that you can attract the kind of talent that can make you money. Honestly, the culture in my opinion, culture is your most important thing in your business. I usually, when I talk to companies, I tell them, there's almost two pillars to your company, and it's systems and culture. And so your culture really is about how you make people feel in your business. Like it's kind of the why behind your business. Like, why do people want to be there? And to me, the most important thing about your culture is trust. You have to develop a culture of trust where the people that you hire, that they trust you. And what do they trust you to do? Well, when you're building a business, it's kind of like building a family. Your team, you end up kind of feeling like your family. And your family's got to trust you to have your back. I mean, like we all know, we've got brothers, sisters, whomever, and no matter what happens, we always have their back for the most part.
Sure.
And your employees have to feel that way about you. That's the number one thing. If you can create a culture that they trust you and that they gain self-respect by working with you, too often, and I'll just speak to negative culture a little bit, too often in the construction industry, we adopt a culture of what I would call a parent-child relationship, even though I hate to call it that because it's not like we want to be mean to our children. Mm-hmm. But where the boss says, look, I'm the boss and you're the peon, and you do what I say, and that's just the way it is. Well, you really have to learn to create a culture where you treat someone the way you'd want to be treated. Like if you wouldn't want to work for yourself, you haven't created a good culture, and it's a little bit of that golden handcuffs kind of theory where if you want to raise up your next competitor, just go ahead and hire a really top talented person, give them a ceiling that they can't surpass, treat them with disrespect, and pretty soon they'll be starting their own business and on their own competing against you. But so your culture, it's got to be about trust and it's got to be about respect, and they've got to know that you've got their back. And personally, I think you should create a culture that is focused around A players. If you don't create a culture where an A player, an A team member wants to work in your business, then you're probably not going to be as profitable as you could be, and you're not going to attract the top talent. And so, to me, what is that culture? Well, it's culture of trust and respect, like I say, is the foundation, but then creating opportunities, letting them excel at their work. You talked about tile being a very artistry form of work. Well, if you study different books and they talk to you about human motivation, what drives and what motivates humans, they'll tell you after they make enough money to pass survival, then they're motivated by three things, and that's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And in where you say tile is very artistry, I would say that's your mastery side of it. Mm-hmm. They want to be a master of their trade. They want to have autonomy. They want to be a responsible human being to do what they're supposed to do, and they want to have purpose. And if you put those things in your culture, you'll attract people that are as profitable and as strong and as A player as you are.
I like that a lot. Isaac. Thank you for bringing this up. I've got a few things to say on this. The mastery of the trade. I really appreciate that because it's so relevant to my current, just last month I was in Jacksonville, Florida for one of the most business oriented conventions for tile contractors. It's called Total Solutions Plus. It's a smaller crowd, but it's business tracks pretty much all day instead of, it's not a trade show. It's more of a business trade show combination. And they hand out awards, and they hand out I believe it's the Tile Person of the Year award or tile craft. I forget the title, but it's heavily focused on craftsmanship and artisanship. And one of the awards they gave out was to an employee of Cox Tile. And I apologize, I cannot remember your name. We had a great conversation, and I'm actually going to interview him. But he was so happy to be receiving this award and being acknowledged, and he is excited for his career path. And briefly talking with him, that is what he wants. He like you said, he's met and probably exceeded his minimum requirement to live, right?
Yep.
So after that, what you're saying is, how are we going to keep them excited about their job, and how are we going to keep them motivated to continue performing and develop into that A-star player? I love this a lot. It's all clicking. As I do this podcast, I learned so much myself, and I hope the audience is picking up on this, because you give them something to reach towards. You show them, hey, did you see an employee won this award? Did you know that this is something you could work for, or did you know
Yeah,
that we're a team here, and it was such a team.
that's right. That's exactly right. You're right on. You're right on cue. I appreciate I appreciate you understanding it.
Well, I'm grasping here. I'm learning a lot. Like I said, I've been doing the podcast for 3 years, and as a contractor myself, we'll discuss this a little later. But what the other point I wanted to kind of hone in here is that illustration of the parent-child hits hard for me, because I have one child. She's 5 now, and I find myself wanting to say that classic phrase, because I said so. In other words, the why, she's 5. Why this? Why that?
Yep.
Because I want to say and repeat, because I catch myself every day. I want to, because I said so. And sometimes I let it slip. But for the most part, I've been really attempting to be cognizant of slowing down and explaining to her. And it's amazing her attitude change when I actually explain why, or you explain it in terms she can understand. And then she'll, instead of saying why, she says, "Oh, okay," and then moves on with her day.
It's amazing, huh? I mean, I love as you're explaining that, because you said exactly what I don't like about the term parent-child relationship, and that's exactly it. Is in the construction industry, we often say it like that, but that's the reality. Is I don't want to treat my child that way either. But in general, humans don't want to be treated that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone like me, I had a soft spot for certain employees, or all my employees really. And I had a really hands-off approach to my leadership, or my, my position as their boss, right?
Right.
And I have a feeling that a lot of contractors in general struggle with this. They don't want to, they struggle between either bringing the hammer down and being too forceful, or not, not really cultivating that that relationship and being the leader they need to be. Or they're the other way, where, and I see this all the time. He's just not doing this or that, but there's no mention of conversation. There's no mention of, kind of mentoring that employee, and then they cut them loose, and then the cycle continues, and they're constantly hiring every 3 to 5 years, for a couple different reasons. But one of them, I believe, is the lack of, building that relationship and cultivating their skill, and the team, the teamship really of the whole thing. What would you say to someone like me, who just really struggled to find that balance? And I was a little bit too passive, as far as like sometimes deadlines I would just, let them take as long as they wanted, and things of this nature. How do you strike that balance? I mean, I'm learning to do it with my child, but I struggled with my employees.
Yeah, that's another really great question and topic. And I would say the number one thing you got to do as a leader is you have to set clear expectations of what success means. Mm-hmm. That's the number one thing. And the way I try to think of it is, if you want to be surrounded by A players, try to create an environment that A players can thrive in. And if you think about yourself, and I'll say that most business owners are probably A players that came from another company. Okay. And typically an A player, they want communication, and they want feedback, and too often, because we're trying to be nice, we end up almost coming across passive aggressive, where we're not quite telling people what we need to tell them, because we just don't want to make them feel bad. But if you, in communication, there's 4 types of communication. I think there's passive aggressive, there's aggressive, there's passive, and there's assertive. And most A players appreciate assertive communication the most. You're not being aggressive, you're not demeaning or putting them down or making them feel terrible, but you're being very direct and assertive. Like, this is what needs to happen. This is what we need to do. This is what we've got to accomplish in order to hit our goals or meet our expectations. And when you give them that kind of environment, they thrive better. An A player thrives off goal setting, and they thrive off clear communication of what needs to happen. And so I guess that's the first thing I would say. Secondly is, oftentimes when we do, let someone go, like you're saying, we've done that before we've given them an opportunity by giving them clear communication.
Right.
You know, sort of like, here's the things you need to work on, and here's what you need to do to make your game better. Like, you know, most people, I should say, the people that I want to attract around me, they want to know what it takes for them to move to the next level. And so I want to make sure I tell them.
Nice. So it all boils down to communication is one of the key elements that you mentioned. I like it.
And the message I'd like to get across is we're trying to be polite, so we be passive aggressive. When in reality, when you study communication, they say the highest amount of respectful communication is assertive. Clear, direct communication is the highest amount of respect you can give another person. And passive aggressive is actually the lowest amount of respect you can give another person. But we kind of, I guess culturally, we want to be nice. And so we're passive aggressive when it's really not as respectful as assertive.
I appreciate that. That's a great sentence. I thank you. Yeah. So it makes sense, because when you think about it, you want to be talked to straight as a man, as a human, as a man or woman. You want to be given the information and given your task. You know, someone said it good the other day. It's like, give me my task and I will produce and knock it out of the park, you know, but I don't need to be, I'm already accomplished. I'm a contractor. So I just want I just want my task, and, you know, tell me the deadline and we'll do it, you know. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for diving down this rabbit hole with me a little deeper, Isaac. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was reading your bio on LinkedIn, and I really liked how you said, well, first of all, you said something kind of scary. You mentioned that over 70% of construction companies will fail within 7 years. That's a pretty large number.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then you went on to say how, through your business life, your contractor life, and your own challenges were what really brought awareness to you how desperately the contractor construction world needs better tools to, be financially healthy and strengthen their bottom line and not have such a high rate of failure. Because that's not good for contractors. That's not good for the trades. And frankly, it's not good for the consumers. It's not good for the clients.
That's right. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah. So this is what I was excited about, though, because, you mentioned that you went on to work the way your mind is. You wanted to identify, what the problem was, first of all, and then how to address it and where you could fit in on finding those solutions. And that caught my attention because, that's essentially the same reason, as I was saying just a minute ago, that I started this podcast, because one of the solutions I found for my contractor business was podcasts, oddly enough, because I'm driving 30, 60, 90 minutes a day in the truck. Mm-hmm. I'm working on sometimes job sites that I could listen to podcasts, either in my ears or on the radio. So I was all of a sudden, once I found a specifically business orientated podcast, I was going to school sometimes 10 hours a day, just passively, and even though I wasn't taking notes or hearing, I was probably only tuning in for 40, 60% of it. I still found myself months and a year into podcasts, my business was humming along so much smoother. And so that's why I started. So I'm glad to formulate and connect here. Again, I just wanted to kind of emphasize that our goals are aligned, and that's what I appreciate about you, Isaac. We both want to strengthen contractors out there.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, one of the things we've kind of touched on is leadership, but, can we hone in on it a little more, and somebody who is wanting to improve and grow their leadership skills, what advice could you give them?
You just barely hit it with podcasts. I often tell people to listen to Audible, MIDI audiobooks.
Correct.
And, both are valuable.
Yep.
And so, we used to have the statement that leaders are readers,
Mm-hmm.
But in our world, oftentimes the tasks we're working on are very monotonous, and we have a great opportunity to listen to books or podcasts, like you're saying. And that's a heavy piece of advice I would give, is you should absolutely be consuming some books or some podcasts. And the awesome thing about, I'll lean toward books a little bit, just because I've kind of, I've read a lot more that direction. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, but probably maybe more books. you can take someone's entire life experience or business experience and they've condensed it down to 8 hours, and you can digest that whole thing rather than spending their whole life, you know?
That's a great point. Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing, and you can learn
Yeah.
all these life lessons from them, and it's just fantastic. So I'd say, readers are leaders, or in this case, listeners.
Yeah.
Listen to podcasts like like the one you're doing today, or you're like Tile Money like you have on a regular basis, and then books and so forth. But I'd say they need to study leadership, and then that's the other thing is actually study leadership. Actually make that something that you try to think of is how can I be a better leader. There's a lot of books on leadership. Good to Great is a wonderful book. 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership. We could go through a lot of different leadership books, but when you start studying leadership books, you start to be able to compare it with your own characteristics and say, am I being or acting like a leader, or what things can I do to be a better leader?
Mm-hmm. So essentially, it's like everything, right? I mean, they say when you want to learn a new language, you dive into it, and some people will even move to that country. My wife and I, we traveled in Central America for 3 months, and by the end of it, we were overconfident in our Spanish, but we were able to communicate on a small scale just after 3 months of essentially diving into it and immersing yourself in it. So what you're saying, and this really applies to everything, not just leadership, is if you're a contractor out there and the first thing, again, it goes back to identifying your weakness, right? Like we talked about at the outset, at the beginning of this, was with profitable or not profitable jobs. You have to identify those and understand which jobs are causing you money and which jobs are profitable. And then once you know the problem, right? So you have to admit to yourself your weaknesses and then dive into the books and podcast, or however, if you're a visual learner, YouTube or, whatever, dive into this world of leadership or whatever that skill might be. Solid advice. It's simple. It sounds simple, but if you're listening to this podcast and you're not doing this, you're missing out on a simple but effective solution that thousands, the most profitable, recognizable names in business are practicing. I mean, it's astonishing how simple it really is.
I agreed. It is really simple. And I'll tie it back to what I said in kind of the beginning of the podcast, where I said, I always tell people focus on your systems and culture, because if you focus only on culture, you can be the greatest guy on the planet and the nicest friend and all those kind of things, and you'll run a failing company, and nobody wants to work for that. And so even studying things like your leadership, that's part of your systems. You have systems in your business that help you to become better and to thrive, to get the data that you need to analyze your projects so that you can win. Because that's the other key thing about A players is A players want to win. They want to win with you. They don't want to lose.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Talking about, really the systems is really what you found and were attracted to, right? And what you built out with BusyBusy. Tell us some of the history behind the thought process that went into BusyBusy.
Okay. Well, so first off, what I did is in going through the construction industry, I ended up kind of filling every position, all the way from working in the field to managing the on-site project to estimating the project, and even ownership. So I got to see all aspects of the construction business, and we ended up growing our company up to where we had 40, 45 employees. So not tremendously huge, but big enough to hit a lot of different problems.
Sure.
And yeah. And so you do, there's different problems that you have at 2 to 3 people and 4 people than you do at 10 to 15 and 20 to 30 and 40 to 50 and beyond. And so, and really they're very different problems. But anyway, as I was going through the business and I was doing what I'm sure all your listeners do, which is you're wearing all the hats. You're the tile setter, you're the payroll administrator, you're the estimator, you're the job project manager. You keep everything going, right? And that can be a lot of it can be a lot to take on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I really just got thinking, man, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better system for this, to really offload these things. And so I started researching the construction industry. That's part of my nature is I'm very analytical. I analyze everything.
Yeah.
One way we'd make a lot of money on our projects is I would analyze how they were bid and then see if I could outperform the bid. Whatever expectations the estimator had, could I outperform those? Because I'm both analytical and I'm competitive that way, where I want to, and that's why I say, give people expectations. If you tell me I've got 40 hours to do a job, I'm going to try to do it in 35 because I'm competitive.
Sure. Yeah. Nice.
So anyways, I was going through and studying and researching the industry. One of the things I discovered is the scary statistic you brought up from my bio, is that 70% of the time construction companies fail. They go bankrupt. And so 100 guys, you might say, go into business on year one, and by year 4, 57 of them have gone out of business, and by year 7, 70 of them have gone out of business. And then it continues. The high level of carnage doesn't continue as much after year 7, but it still continues. And so really I kind of looked at it like a research project, and I was analyzing it, saying, okay, what's the root cause? What's the reason? I was really looking for the why. Like, why are contractors failing? I know my experiences, I know the struggles I've had and the things I've had to wrap my mind around, but why are contractors failing? And so I spent a lot of time researching the industry. I even hired a research company out of Connecticut to do a poll coast to coast, because I wanted to understand, I want to make sure I wasn't just seeing things from a Utah perspective. What things are other people experiencing? And what I found was that everybody's problems were pretty common, all across the trades. There wasn't really a lot of differences as to why they failed. And so the basic thing that I discovered was this: you couldn't hardly find record of somebody who failed because they didn't understand their skill set. A tradesman. All of it was they didn't understand business. They didn't understand these systems and principles. And so the key statement that I was able to boil it down to is contractors fail due to insufficient information to make profitable decisions. They didn't have the information they need. It was insufficient for them to make profitable decisions. And I'd point back to what I said earlier in the podcast. You don't know which jobs are winning and which jobs are losing. And so you might be pursuing jobs that lose you money instead of jobs that win you money, because you don't have the information systems in place to identify the difference between those two. And that's one of the most clear examples. And in business, and I don't want your listeners to feel like they're a bad business person because they don't have this information. In BusyBusy, over 50% of our clients that we sign up, we're introducing to things like job costing. We're introducing to job tracking.
Sure.
And because that's just the reality is we're in a business. This is how a typical contractor starts out, is why do they go into business for themselves? As I continue my research project, and that's what I do all the time now with BusyBusy, as you look at it kind of like a triage, like 70% of people are dying. What are they dying from? What are the people's characteristics? Where do they come from? All that kind of stuff. Well, where do contractors typically come from? Most contractors go into business for themselves because they were unsatisfied for some reason or another, and they were a good trade skillsman. They had they're master at their trade. And so usually it's because the environment they were working in was either not satisfying, it was hostile, it was a problem for one reason or another, didn't provide opportunities. So when we talk about how you build a good team around you, I usually look for those opposite examples. Like, what are all the reasons you would leave a company? Fix those reasons.
Yeah.
But most contractors, they go into business for themselves. So they're the best tile setter out there. They're the best artisan out there. They go into business for themselves. And what they immediately find out is that business requires a lot more than just the skilled trade, right?
Yeah.
And so now they're learning. They're going through a brand new learning curve of all the things they don't know, how to manage a business. And I have this, I don't know if it's in my bio online, but I have this rainbow of responsibilities. We talked about 11 different responsibilities that everybody ends up managing, and they go through, and I should be able to quote those right off the top of my head, but I should find that. I should have found that for the podcast. But anyway, they have various responsibilities. Some of that is managing their employees, their assets, their equipment, their legal responsibilities, inspection responsibilities, managing customers, managing estimating, planning for future growth, all these different systems that they've got to deal with, insurance. I mean, just a ton of different things, keeping up with regulations, and they weren't prepared to deal with any of those things. And usually that's what takes them out of the game, is just systems, lack of systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're in my surmise, from my research and the thought process that I've done on the same subject of first of all, why are contractors fail? But second of all, why do so many, we call them runaway helpers is what we used to call them.
Yeah.
Runaway apprentices for a more correct term now. Why do they go out? Why did I? At 19, why did I leave my employer and go out and strike it on my own? And it was largely, due to not understanding how hard it was going to be, right? And also, being a little bit dissatisfied with the environment I was in.
Right.
And once friends and family get wind that all of a sudden you have a few tools, they're going to say, well, we'll pay you $35 an hour cash. And if you're making 20 or under, all of a sudden, you're going to do a week's worth of work and think you're on top of the world.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So this is interesting because what this does and what this podcast is all about is we really want to strengthen the contractor businesses that, really have a potential to strengthen the entire industry and employ people at a fair wage and understand what that looks like and create opportunities for people, because I think there are a lot of people. In fact, when I got married, I was 25. I moved to California. I got my contractor license, but it was very difficult. So then I went looking for a job. Well, I had my tools. I had, by that time I had 8 years experience in the trade. I had a license in the state of California. But I couldn't find a job in 2008 that paid over $20 an hour, and I was living in Monterey, California.
Wow.
So I wasn't going to go to work. I wasn't going to, you can't live. I mean, you can't live on that. So, and maybe partly that's my fault, for not demanding more or, not having the tools at that time to do so. But it is a reality for most people in most states and most cities. There are exceptions where you have strong, tile contractor companies who kind of set the standard. They set the bar, and then even though, most companies are going to fall below it, and the competitive ones will try to, continue to play at the same level or higher, right?
Right.
It raises the standard for everybody in that, I'll just say, county or community of tile contractors, or, insert whatever contractor trade you want to.
Yep.
So this is really what we're talking about is a tool and a thought process really of strengthening your business and providing better opportunities for employees. I love it. So you started BusyBusy tracking labor data because you felt that was a huge lack and a huge problem.
Yes. Yep. I started with labor for, I mentioned kind of looking at it from a triage point of view. It's like, okay, if 70% of people are dying, which artery are they going to bleed out by the first? Which one's going to bleed you out the fastest? And when I studied the different systems that was basically destroying the contractors, labor was number one. They estimate, and I could, make it simple. A simple example for your listeners is, you estimate a job. Now, if you're on piecework, that's one thing. That's a different topic, right? But say you pay your guys by the hour, and so you estimate the job, and you say it's going to take you, X amount of hours, whatever that amount is. At the end of the day, are you comparing what it actually took to what you thought it would take?
Right.
And do you have proper tracking systems to let you compare that? And so when you get into that, you have to have systems that will track the person's time accurately and track it to the project accurately, and sometimes to the task, depending on how you want to divide up your tasks. And in essence, you should divide up your tasks based on the same way you estimate them so that you can compare it at the end of the game. And so I like to call it the project accounting cycle, which is basically, You estimate the work, you execute or perform the work, and then you evaluate the work. And if you do that, then your next estimate's better and better and better. And you end up discovering more and more of what you could do different on the next job. And so if you're not tracking what you're doing often, or what a lot of people do, is they're kind of using their bank account to run their business. Like, okay, I've got money, or I don't have money, or, I collected this much in this month and I'm paying this much out this month. But that doesn't tell you whether you're winning or losing on an individual project basis. And so at the very simple level of it, what I discovered is it wasn't too difficult for contractors to track their materials of whether they were winning or losing.
Sure.
But it was more difficult by far to track their labor. And so that's what I started with, tracking labor, because that was the hardest thing, the biggest variable, you might say.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I was very old school, where I had each job had a folder, and my intentions were good.
Good for you.
My intentions were good. I wrote the time and the employees on the inside of every calendar. For the most part, I was fairly good about that. And my intentions were always to do job costing afterwards. But, especially in these recent years, you're so busy that, I'll do that next week. I'm going to do it all at once. And then all of a sudden you have 15 jobs and you think you're going to do it, and you just don't. So this eliminates that and makes it stupid easy to track your labor and manage your employees. And what I like, Isaac, is it's very cost effective. It's very reasonably priced, and I believe you would have a free version.
That's true. We do.
For like, say, a single contractor to use. Now, anybody who wants to check out BusyBusy and dive in a little deeper, look for my interviews with Ryan, and we're going to have some shorter interviews on YouTube and dive into the specifics and some of the more advanced, capabilities of BusyBusy app. And if you can't wait for that and you want to download the app and check it out, use the link in my show notes to go ahead and find out more about BusyBusy. That will be, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening in the podcast, you can find that link. So friends, I just wanted to let you know about that. This is a very, my guard, to be honest, Isaac, when Ryan reached out to me, I get, that happens a lot. And my guard was up, but then, I checked it out and I saw it was a powerful tool, but then I sat in on a webinar he did with the NTCA. And I saw not only my reaction, once I understood how powerful, and useful this tool was, but the audience that was also with me on that webinar from the NTCA,
cool.
They were super positive, and the contractors who were on me that I knew. And then I've reached out to contractors that I know, like David Sandana up in Washington, I forgot the business name right off the top of my head. But anyway, David, you know who you are. And he's using it and loving it. So I've heard positive things and
cool.
and learned about it. So I'm excited to share it with my audience. I appreciate your time. We're coming up on an hour, Isaac. Do you have any last words? Anything we missed?
Nothing that we couldn't share on another podcast. I guess, well, maybe I'll just insert this last parting thought is when we talk about leadership and honing your skills as a leader, one thing I would highly recommend to your audience is also learn how to negotiate, learn negotiation skills.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those leadership skills. Often contractors, we get taken advantage of in the negotiation. And so we've got to learn how to negotiate so that we set ourselves up for winning also.
Absolutely. No, I love it. Isaac. And friends, negotiation, how we've really honed in on that topic on this podcast. We have Ron Nash, a reoccurring guest, the president of Laticrete International, coming back soon. I don't know if it's November or December or January, but within the next 90 days here to give us some new information on negotiation. I mean, awesome. Ron is, that's one of his key topics, and he continues to educate himself on it and continues to share it with the audience. So cool. Look forward to that, because we do believe that negotiation is not a bad word. It's something that you do whether you know or not, right? I mean,
Yep.
yeah. So it's good to know. Good to know. All right, Isaac. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your insights and your knowledge and history. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast in the future.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come on your show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Luke.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Tile friends, we'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, we are a weekly podcast. You can find in a podcast player app of your choice. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcast, etc. If you want to stay in touch with all things Tile Money, please do subscribe to our newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. That's where we will let you know of our weekly episodes that might catch your interest, and we will also let you know of upcoming events like trade shows and such where we will be live streaming and things of this nature. So you can find that in the show notes, or just go to tilemoney.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Stay positive out there, Tile friends. I hope you're having a great week. And please, above all else, don't forget, stay profitable, Tile friends. We'll talk to you next week. Take it easy.